is reshaping our lives. It dramatically changed the way we live, the way we learn, the way we work, and the way we communicate. Technology has tremendous potential to connect us with one another. But there are still people who remain unreached, disconnected, and deprived of digital opportunities. Tech4ED centers serve as hubs that enable skills training and job opportunities.
We have more than 4,000 registered users, and about 67% are women, and majority composed of students as our beneficiaries. And why women? Because we are gender responsive, so all our programs are aligned with the gender and development program of our province.
Natutunan ko yung ibang skills na dapat sa ibang schools na dapat per years dapat maano mo lang dito ng mabilisan ng mga months, mga 3 months, makakuha mo lang agad tapos maka-work agad.
This program helped me by finding a job and of course gaining more confidence as well. I was able to gain knowledge about the BPOs, on how does the environment work and how am I going to interact with my future customers.
As of now, as I was the call center agent, so I see that difference because as of now I'm earning more than I have earned before as a tricycle driver.
Good afternoon and welcome to Negros Occidental Language and Information Technology Center Webinar Series. The month of June is also the national observance of the ICT month, onwards through ICT. We are down to our last webinar for this month, and there's no better way to end it than to have another expert to talk about environmental restoration. Before we start with our webinar, let's pause for a moment and say a prayer to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem and the Negros Hymn.
O labing makagagahom nga amay namon sa langit, mahinuklugon nga laon nga tagtugas ang langit, hangin, kalayo, tubig kag duta. Tanda ining imong timawa, gabay ining pag-ampo, magadulot sa amon sang kabuhi nga himaya. Salamat sa mga bugay nga imo ginpaambit sa amon. Salamat sa kabuhi nga ginadulot mo sa amon nga himpit. Salamat sa maayo nga panahon kag ilabi na gid sang imo katutom sa amon. Bendisyone ang imo katawhan. Bendisyone ang ila mga palangabuhian. Bendisyone ang mga panggas sa amon mga talamnan. Bendisyone ang ilang nga paglugayawan sa iban nga kapungsuran. Kabay makalabot sila nga walay sablag sa ila pagapadulungan. Kag ila binagid, bendisyone ining isla sang Negros nga amon natawhan. Kinahalad namon ang ining pag-ampo para sa imo kadayawan.
Noon pa man, malaki na ang naging bahagi ng mga kababaihan sa lipunang Pilipino. Kaisa sila sa marubdob na paghahangad ng kalayaan ng ating lahi. Kabilang sila sa paglinang ng ating makulay na sining at mayamang kultura. Kasapi sila sa pagtataguyod ng mga adhikain ng kapwa mamamayan at sa pagtugon sa mga pangangailangan ng lipunan. Katuwang sila sa pagtuklas sa mga larangan ng agham at medisina. Kapanalig sila sa pagpapairal ng batas, karapatan at katarungan para sa lahat. Kabahagi sila sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sa pagpapanatili ng demokrasyang Pilipino. Sa paglipas ng panahon, hindi nagmaliw ang kanilang pag-ibig sa ating inang bayan. Mga kababayan, ito ang alay ng mga kababaihang Pilipino para sa bayan. Tumayo po tayong lahat at sabay-sabay nating awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Ayang magiging pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dilim mo'y buhay. Lumang hinirang, dulot na ng magiging, sa manlulupin, di ka masisingil. Sa lahat ng tulog, sa sinan at sa lalim mong babang, maginanang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng patawad mo'y tagumpay na nagniligid. Tuwing nag-araw ng kailan pa malimalig, lumayang araw ng 100% buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Ang higaya ng pag-ay makahangin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Sa kita kapamilya, pagbuligay, paginain, palibog, madapat manghari sa ating na probinsya. Magotod na Negrosano, isa katawugan, mapinalang gao, sa punad ang buhan na isakripisyo, sa kauswagan, sa sikatao. Sa kasahan, agad wala may mapilit sa kalulong. Nanagaan kustan nagais na ako. Ang matuod na Negrosano, isa katawagan, mapinalang gao. Sa punad ang buwan na isakripisyo, sa kauswagan, sa sikatao. Ang matuod na Negrosano, sa katawang magpinalang tao, sa punad ang buwan na isakripisyo, pagbulikay, paghigain, paghigog magdapat maghari, para sa kauswagan, sa sikatao.
Hello there once again. My name is Red and I am your virtual host. We at NOLITC are truly delighted to have you all joining us since the start of our series. It really warms our hearts that you took time off your busy schedules to join us today. I hope you had all a wonderful rest over the weekend. The Negros Occidental Language and Information Technology Center, or NOLITC, is the first and only government-run language and ID center in Western Visayas. NOLITC also offers free online training under the Negros Occidental Training for Work Scholarship Program through the Office of the Governor, Governor Eugenio Sebang Lacson, under his 7-point priority agenda, Avance Negrense. Recently, the center has pivoted to online training and conducted various in-demand webinars such as this one. This is our urgent and most responsible access to the ongoing global pandemic. This webinar is another innovative project of NOLITC Tech4ED Center. The center offers ICT-enabled services and content for socio-economic development of unserved and underserved communities. To join, all you need to do is to register once and you will be given access to the entire webinars. You need to sign up for the attendance at the start of this webinar and it will only be open for an hour or two. So kindly do your attendance now. Scan the QR code flash on your screen or click the link in the description bar. To participate in our open forum, you will need to post your questions through our online open forum link. Please find the link in the description bar as well, or you may scan the QR code flash on your screens. We will also be providing digital certificates to those who have successfully filled out the attendance and accomplished the online evaluation, which will be open after the webinar and will be closed at exactly 6 in the evening. If you are watching through Facebook live stream, please follow our page, give our page a thumbs up, or if you're streaming through Facebook or through YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. Kindly share the link to your colleagues, friends, and to your peers, and together, let us learn. To kick off our webinar for this afternoon, let us have the leader who has a vision and knows how to turn her ideas into real-world success stories. Our vocational school administrator and NOLITC Tech4ED Center manager, let us have Dr. Maria Cristina Arbicido.
Thank you, Red. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all our attendees streaming live via Facebook page of NOLITC and our YouTube channel. Thank you for being with us. I would like to welcome our resource speaker for today, Mr. Errol Gatumbato. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for accepting our invitation. This webinar is brought to you by NOLITC Tech4ED Center under the Office of the Governor and under the Gender and Development Program of Governor Eugenio Jose Bong Lacson. This webinar is part also of our advocacy to push for environmental protection. This is part of NOLITC's campaign for Green Tibet. As we celebrate Environment Month, we are called to restore our ecosystem. This platform is our way of supporting the environmental advocacy. We believe to be champions of environmental protection and preservation, especially during this pandemic. Let us all together listen and learn from the expert. We are hoping that this webinar will be a channel for you not only to learn, but to become champions of environmental protection. Again, welcome to this webinar. Let's take care of ourselves and each other. NOLITC Inspire, NOLITC Cares, Avance, Negrense.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tina, for that message of call to action. NOLITC is not where it is right now without the unwavering support of our provincial government, headed by our dear Governor, Eugenio Jose Bong Lacson. To give us a message on behalf of the Governor, let us have the Provincial GAD Focal Point System Action Officer, Ms. Marijon P. Castro.
Pleasant greetings, everyone. On behalf of the Provincial Gender and Development Focal Point System, headed by our Governor Eugenio Jose Bong Lacson, I would like to extend our congratulations to all the participants of this webinar organized by the Negros Occidental Language, Information and Technology Center, headed by our innovative school administrator, Dr. Maria Cristina Arbicido, and supported by her dedicated staff. With the increasing cases of COVID-19 in the province and other parts of the country and the world, you, learning at the comforts of your home or wherever you are where you have stable internet connection, is by far the safest way of acquiring knowledge and skills which you can use for future employment or your eventual business in the future. As the action officer of the provincial GAD focal point system, I am happy to note that our GAD budget is put to good use and is helping women, youth, and the marginalized sector in maximizing their potentials and in contributing to the economic development of their family. Also, NOLITC is helping to change gender relations and improve the status of women in our society. Congratulations to NOLITC and to all the participants for signing up in this course. I hope that you will complete the module, submit the requirements and evaluation so that you will be able to receive your certificates. Malipayon nga adlaw sa inyo tanan and Avance Negrense.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Castro, our action officer. Without spoiling you any further, let us get into the main agenda of today. If 2020 was the year of the coronavirus, then 2021 may be the year that we refocus on restoring our ecosystems. Our resource speaker for today devoted his life to biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of the environment and natural resources of our country. In 1995 to 2002, he has served as a park superintendent of the Mount Canlaon Natural Park. He is also a member of the experts peer review of the INEPRAS IRR of the Philippines and IRR of the Myanmar's Biodiversity and Protected Area Law. He is a columnist of the Visayan Daily Star, and he also keeps a personal blog about his environmental works. Currently, he is the president of Biodiversity Conversation Foundation Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, we are quite fortunate today to have Sir Errol, whose works create trails of green impact, not only in the province, but also in the entire country. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our resource speaker for this afternoon, Sir Errol A. Gatombato. Good afternoon, sir. Yes, I'm sorry, I guess you are muted, Sir Errol.
Thank you, Dawn, and good to see you online. It's been a while
Yes.
that I never see you.
Exactly.
For the public to know, Dawn is my ihada sa Binyag.
Thank you, Sir
Thank you
Errol.
very much for
It
this invitation.
We are so grateful that you have accepted this invitation to talk about environmental restoration for this afternoon. How are you po, Sir Errol?
Okay naman, and I hope ang tanan is safe, and tanan is healthy, and I hope this would be a productive afternoon discussing online on ecosystem restoration. I'm glad that you adopted the theme of the Global Environment Day celebration last June 5, which is the theme is ecosystem restoration. At the same time, Environment Month natin subong January in the
Yes.
whole Philippines, and the theme is also ecosystem restoration. The
Yes.
same is true sa province. We just culminated our Environment Week last week, no? And ecosystem restoration was also the theme, and I'm glad that I will be discussing this topic this afternoon.
Exactly, Sir Errol. I know our audience, our participants, and students are so excited to listen to your insights. So, without further to keep them waiting any longer, the virtual floor is yours. You may now present.
Once again, thank you for the Negros Occidental Language and Information Technology for inviting me here, especially to Tina, to Dawn and Sally for this opportunity to discuss to you topics which is very relevant at this point in time, which is the ecosystem restoration. Okay, we will start. What is ecosystem? We often hear, I will just be talking in Tagalog and English because there might be some other non-Hiligaynon speaking present in this affair or in this forum. So I will be talking in mixed Hiligaynon, Hiligaynon, Tagalog, and English. So we will start with a very basic, napaka-academic. What is an ecosystem? Because our topic is about ecosystem restoration, we have to know first what is ecosystem. I'm sure many of you or all of you are already familiar with this term, But for purposes of discussion, let us be reminded of what is this all about. This is a very simple explanation of ecosystem. Just try to find out the keywords. We are talking here about living things, buhay. We are talking here of given area, and we are talking here of interactions. So these are the interactions of living things in a given area and their environment na part, which is also non-living environment. So if you can see in the picture, this is the Wuhan Lake National Park in Oriental Mindoro. There are two ecosystems that can be found here, the terrestrial and the freshwater ecosystem. And we have to consider that we as the people are already part of this ecosystem. Next slide. We have to take note that ecosystem is one of the 3 levels of biodiversity. What is biodiversity? Of course, very simple definition is the different life forms on Earth. So there are 3 levels of biodiversity. Parati natin ito maririnig, but probably we should need to have a deeper in this understanding on the levels of biodiversity. We will start with genetic level. Napakasimple lang nito, kung sa tao pa, dito natin malaman kung tayo ba ay magkakapatid, tayo ay relatives, or in one way or the other, may relationship. And when we talk about genetic level, sa usapin ng ating kalikasan, sa usapin ng ating environment, if you would notice, for example, hornbills, would you believe that there are several hornbills, no? So these hornbills are different genetically. Kaya hornbill sila lahat, pero there are different kinds of hornbills. For example, in Negros, we have the Visayan Tarictic hornbill and we have also the Rufous-headed hornbill. Pareho sila na hornbill, pero magkaiba. And then the second is the species level. Of course, these are the different species of plants and animals, from mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and other marine species. So species diversity. And when we talk about species diversity, did you know that the Philippines is one of the most diverse countries in terms of species throughout the world? And our topic for this afternoon is the ecosystem level, which is the variety of ecosystems or habitats. I will give example of this kind of the different kinds of ecosystem that can be found in our country. This one, kung minsan yung mga ecosystems natin ay overlapping, magkatabi, or they have connection to each other. For example, this one, as you can see in the background, there is a forest. And immediately after the forest, may tubig. This is not dagat, no? This is fresh water. This is a lake. So kung titingnan nyo, the forest is an ecosystem itself, pero katabi niya may freshwater ecosystem. Kung titingnan mo sila kabuuan as part of the Bulusan Volcano Natural Park, isang malaking ecosystem siya. That's why in discussing ecosystem, kung minsan may napakalaking ecosystem, pero within that ecosystem, may mga sub or mini ecosystems that can be found wherein may mga different species of plants and animals na nabubuhay. Isang example lang, even a tree itself is an ecosystem. Nakakita kayo ng malalaking puno. Sa malalaking puno na yan ay may maraming tanim na nabubuhay. Maraming tanim ang nakadikit at minsan may iba't ibang hayop din na namumuhay sa isang puno yan. So even a tree itself is an ecosystem. Okay, this one is the karst limestone forest. Kaya nga sinasabi ko kanina, no, yung forest natin, ang daming classification ng forest. This one is a karst forest or limestone forest. Makikita ito sa Palawan, but we have also limestone forest here in Negros Occidental, particularly in the southern Negros Occidental. So this is one kind of forest in a forest ecosystem. So we have also mountain, we have several other kinds of forests like savanna and many others. So dito naman, makikita natin, gusto kong i-illustrate dito na yung forest at yung marine environment ay magkadikit. So dito natin makikita yung direct relationship ng one ecosystem to the other. For example, kung maputol yung mga puno dito, magkaroon ng erosion, saan pupunta yan? Pupunta yan sa marine ecosystem at anong mangyayari? Siyempre matabunan yung mga corals, yung mga seagrass, and all other organisms that can be found in our marine ecosystem. And by the way, for the information lang ng listeners or ng viewers, this one is Coron Island in Coron, Palawan. The entire island is an ancestral domain of the indigenous people. So they are managing this site, even the tourism in that area, yung mga katutubo ang nagmamanage. So that's why we are looking into the possibility that there are also sites in the country that should be exclusively managed by our indigenous people. This is another form of ecosystem, our cave ecosystem. Kung titingnan nyo, may mga stalagmites, but this is already a dead cave. Unfortunately, this is hininubaan, ubong. So kung makikita nyo, parang patay na siya. I don't know kung patay na siya talaga or hindi. But as you can see, there are already no drippings. Very dry na siya. And unfortunately then, maraming vandals inside. So ang cave is an ecosystem. Usually ang mga bats, makikita natin dito at ibang organisms. Ang ibang caves naman ay may water ecosystem din kasi there are underground river, for example, na may caves. Ang best example is the Puerto Princesa. Kung nakapunta na kayo doon, that is the underwater river na kung saan makikita siya along the cave. So the cave itself is an ecosystem, and there are species of bats actually that are endemic to certain caves in the Philippines. Okay, this one, this is very common to us, urban ecosystem. The urban ecosystem, usually these are our towns, municipalities, barangays, and anywhere where there are a lot of people. Ang problema natin ngayon sa mga urban ecosystems natin, especially those that can be major urban centers, are already heavily congested. So ang daming tao na. This one, medyo maganda yung pagkakuha. This is actually in Bacolod City at the Capito Lagoon. Ito, coastal ecosystem. Ang makikita nyo sa picture, yung green, yung mga puno, that is a beach forest. At that is also one ecosystem along the coastal ecosystem. So napakaganda ng lugar na ito. This is in Polillo Island in Quezon. So coastal ecosystem is a very productive because there are certain species na nagiging habitat nito, and equally important when it comes to fishery production. Okay, agricultural ecosystem. Yung agricultural areas natin is an ecosystem itself, Yeah, aside from agricultural products, in this area we can also find some species, yung mga insects and even butterflies, even birds, may makikita natin. But unfortunately, many of our agricultural ecosystems are already eroded because of the heavy use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides that tend to destroy the fertility of our land. And I am glad that here in Negros Occidental, the advocacy and the promotion of sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture, started to gain grounds. This is another important ecosystem, mangrove ecosystem, This can be found also, ito sinasabi ko kanina na overlapping, kasi yung mangrove ecosystem can also be found in our coastal ecosystem. Mangrove is very productive when it comes to our food. Dito kinukuha yung ating mga commercially important species. Aside from protecting us from the hazards, from natural hazards like storm surges and other natural calamities, these are very important when it comes to our economy. Ito yung mangrove area sa Suyac Island, and would you believe that these mangrove stands in Suyac Island protected the people there in the island during Yolanda? So kahit anong lakas ng tubig, zero casualty ang island na iyan dahil makapal yung mangrove areas. There are also several other areas like in Samar that the communities have been protected by the onslaught of Typhoon Yolanda, remember that? Because of the mangrove stands that surrounds several islands in that region. Okay, why ecosystem restoration? Kung ganoon kaganda, example, kung ganoon pala kaganda yung ating mga ecosystems tulad ng mga slides na pinakita ko, why there is a need for restoration. Sinasabi ng United Nations na ang ecosystem restoration is preventing, halting, reversing the damages we created to our ecosystems. Although there are some damages created naturally, but many of the damages, almost all the damages we inflicted na ginawa natin sa ating ecosystems are all man-made. So we will go from exploiting nature to healing. So ito yung sinasabi natin, ano? During this pandemic, we need healing in terms of our health, in terms of our total person, but we have to take note, matagal na gusto ng kalikasan, ng nature to heal, because the nature has been severely damaged, na kailangan niya rin mag-heal. If you were able to monitor in social media during the pandemic last year, may mga areas na kung saan yung mga wildlife makikita in heavy streets, in formerly congested areas. So lumabas yung mga wildlife, ano? So it means siguro na nakapagpahinga ang ating mga wildlife ay they found it safe to go out from their habitats. And also during the pandemic, well, pandemic is very bad. But the good side, as far as nature is concerned, nakapagpahinga kahit paano yung nature. Just try to imagine last year, napakalaki ng reduction ng ating pollution. Napakalaki ng reduction in terms of our consumption, because the consumption of the people sa ating natural resources are so huge na hindi na kayang ibalik naturally ng ating mga ecosystems kung ano man yung kinuha ng mga tao. So during this year's Environment Day, last June 5, the United Nations declared or launched the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. This is from 2021 to 2030. This is very ambitious plan na dapat magkaroon ng global restoration to revive billions of hectares from forest to farmlands, from top of mountains to the deep depth of the sea. So kaya-kaya natin i-restore ang ating ecosystem. So let's try to find out what's happening to our ecosystems. But before that, I would like to provide you with a context in terms of resource management para maintindihan natin lahat, mag-level off tayo, bakit kailangan natin mag-restore ng ating ecosystem. So this is the historical perspective. Alam nyo, nung una, yung mga katutubo, yung mga indigenous people, they have their own traditional system of resource use and management. Wala pa yung mga invaders, mga dayuhan sa bansa natin, they are using our natural resources according to their needs. So wala silang refrigerator. Ang refrigerator nila, nature. Yung dagat, yung ilog, yung gubat, they just took the food they need. So hindi nila kailangan mag-store. So in a way, this was the period, yung sinasabi natin na living in harmony with nature. Kaya natin gawin yun at this point in time. So that was a very ideal situation when the indigenous people were not using too much of our resources. They were only using kung ano yung kailangan nila. Dahil at that time, the environment was so beautiful that everything could be found in our environment, from food, shelter, medicine, and many things. So this traditional and indigenous system of resource use and management, in fact, tinitingnan natin ngayon kasi karamihan nito ay nawala na. But there are some groups who are trying to revive, trying to study, trying to assess kung ano pa yung natitirang indigenous resource management na pwedeng gawin natin ngayon. And then this one, the Spanish colonial period, ano? Nang dumating ang mga Kastila, malawak pa rin yung ating mga gubat, malawak pa rin ang ating mga areas na sabihin natin in natural condition. Sige, pakipindot. But during this time, inintroduce sa atin ng mga Espanyol ang tinatawag natin na Regalian Doctrine. Hanggang ngayon, ito pa rin yung ginagamit natin. Ano ang tinatawag na Regalian Doctrine? Na lahat ng land and other natural resources are owned by the state. Okay? So dati, di ba, mga Priley, sinasabi nila, akin to, akin to, akin to. So ngayon, that Regalian Doctrine, hanggang ngayon, yan pa rin ang ating pinapaniwalaan na lahat ng natural resources, including air, including resources that can be found beneath the land, beneath the earth, are owned by the state. That is why kahit anything that you would do in terms of natural resources, kailangan ng permit. Okay? We have take note of that. Why? Because ownership of our natural resources are owned by the state, kaya kailangan natin humingi ng permiso sa gobyerno when we use our natural resources. The use of natural resources further enhanced or further aggravated during the American colonial period. Dito naging popular ang logging industry. Balik mo na. Dito naging popular ang logging industry. There was one point in time na yung Pilipinas ay #1 exporter of logs throughout the world. In fact, na alam niyo na siguro ito, na yung isang pinakamalaking logging concession in the world, the Insular Lumber Corporation, operated in Negros. At first, sa northern part and later on sa southern part. So this was the time of resource utilization from logging, mining, and fishery. Ang isang masabi natin na magandang introduction ng Amerikano sa atin, yung introduction ng National Park System. Because that was the time na nag-i-exploit sila ng ating logging industry. They found out that there are so many areas na napakaganda na kailangan i-declare as a national park. So ang ating national park ay patterned after sa American system of national park. Yung first national park in the world, yung Yellowstone National Park sa US, ang ginawa ng mga Kano, gusto nila i-declare yan as a national park. May mga indigenous people, may mga Indian tribes. Ang ginawa nila, nirelocate nila yung mga Indian tribes, gumawa ng Indian reservation para walang tao yung national park. The concept of national park is only for the purposes of scientific, educational, and recreational purposes. There was a study in the 80s by the World Bank that most, if not all, of our national park system could no longer qualify under the concept of national park system. Kaya binago ang national park system. Ngayon hindi na tayo ngayon ang sinasabi na natin, this is no longer national park system but our protected area system, or what we call National Integrated Protected Area System, na kung saan may different models of management na. Dahil ang ating mga protected areas, ang ating mga national parks are already occupied, just like our Mount Canlaon, Northern Negros Natural Park here in Negros Island, na almost half of their areas are already occupied by the people. Okay, post-colonial period, and this is also post-war, World War II. So dahil may reconstruction ng buong mundo, kahit yung Pilipinas, we are natural resource-based economy. We are dependent on our natural resources from forest to coastal to marine ecosystems para gamitin ang ating natural resources to revive and improve the economy. Pero yun parati kasi ang pinagsasabi natin that we have to make use of our natural resources para umunlad ang bansa. Naubos na yung forest natin sa lagi. Umunlad ba ang Pilipinas? Kukunti na lang yung corals natin. Umunlad ba ang Pilipinas? So I think the more that we exploited our natural resources, the more na nagiging kunti ang ating natural resources, at eventually, ito, naramdaman na natin na there are areas already na may scarcity na in terms of water, in terms of food. Okay, next. Okay, environmental abuse and destruction continues up to 80s. There was a point in time na sa Negros, halos lahat ng mga municipalities, especially in the northern and southern Negros Occidental, are basically covered with logging concessions. Ito Negros Occidental. Why do you think Negros Occidental very pronounced or very napakalawak ng logging industry before? Alam nyo kasi yung ang forest cover or ang forest land ng Negros Occidental, particularly in the northern and southern part, ito yung tinatawag natin na lowland forest. Yung lowland forest, ito yung mga areas below 1,000 meters above sea level, above sea level. So dito matatagpuan or dito makikita ang mga commercially viable dipterocarp species. Ito yung mga hardwood natin. So yan, kung titingnan ninyo, as you can see in the map, this is the map of Negros Island, and recently, the forest cover started to diminish. Through the years, the forest cover diminished at kukunti na lang ang ating forest cover. Particularly sa Negros Occidental, our forest cover ay Northern Negros Natural Park na lang, Mount Canlaon, and to a certain extent dito sa southwestern key biodiversity area sa Southern Negros Occidental. Okay, and here comes the climate change phenomenon. We have climate crisis. I don't know if you believe it or not, but okay, ito isang indication lang. Did you notice na yung climatic pattern natin parang hindi natin alam? We don't know kung kailan na ang tag-ulan, kailan ang tag-init. Kung umulan man, sobra-sobra. Kung tag-init, sobra-sobra. So lumalabas na ngayon yung mga El Niña, La Niña phenomenon. So basically, the climate of the world has already been altered. Why? Of course, alam natin, one of the factors is the destruction of our ozone layer, which is irreversible damage. Hindi na yan ma-repair, butas na yan. Kaya yung sinasabi natin sa climate change, we could not stop it, mitigate the impacts and adapt and adjust to what is there. So kaya yung sinasabi na natin ngayon ay climate change adaptation. And worst, ito pa, climate change, may climate crisis na tayo. Nagkaroon pa tayo ng health crisis. So where are we heading? So ito yung napakalungkot, ano? Ang COVID kasi ito yung coronavirus, ano, yung original the reason ng pagkasakit ng COVID ay nagsimula lang sa isang hayop. I tried to do research on this and some literature pointed out na yung coronavirus, ang talagang host niya nito ay ang mga bats. And based on my readings actually, yung sinasabi nila na yung bats ay nag-contaminate sa pangolin. Ang pangolin ay nag-contaminate sa tao. At yung isang tao ay nag-contaminate ng ilang tao, maraming tao, isang city, isang province, isang bansa, hanggang kumalat sa iba't ibang bayan na nagiging global pandemic. Try to think about it. From one virus, bakit ito na nangyari sa ating bayan? Bakit ganito na lang nangyayari sa ating mundo? Did we ever think na mangyayari sa atin yung tinatawag natin na lockdown? Did we ever think na ngayon naka-face shield, naka-face mask, at halos hindi na tayo makalabas because of this pandemic? So, basically, ito yung dahilan dahil sa wildlife abuse, ano? Hindi kasi natin hinayaan yung wildlife sa kanilang mga habitat, no? So this is basically caused by hunting. Aside from that, yung pagkalat ng viruses, ng pathogens, could also be attributed sa pagkasira ng tahanan ng ating mga wildlife. So kung wala na ang tahanan yung mga wildlife at may mga iilan pa yan, saan sila pupunta? There are already areas na may mga tao, yung may mga communities na kung saan makikita mo na rin yung wildlife. Hindi pa rin tayo mulat when it comes to virus. I remember in the past ang Ebola, parang wala lang sa atin, ano, kasi hindi tayo directly affected at na-prevent. Ang HIV na hanggang ngayon wala pang vaccine. Galing din yan sa wildlife. Ang SARS, no? So mabuti na lang nagkaroon ng prevention, but here comes COVID, ano? Buti na lang may vaccine ngayon, pero I don't know how this will prevent, because basically in terms of cure, wala pa talaga cure ang COVID. What we have now are vaccine to prevent the spread of these viruses. So I think this is a wake-up call for all of us that we have to rethink not only of our use of our natural resources, but also of our lifestyle. So hindi lang tao ang kailangan ng healing. Nature needs healing. Kaya yung sinasabi natin ngayon, ang sinasabi ng United Nations, na ang pinaka-thrust natin should be ecosystem restoration, because by restoring ecosystem, we are improving the health of our ecosystem. And when we are improving the health of our ecosystem, we are improving the health of the people. Okay, some facts. I would just like to present this to you in very brief. Okay, we have the land classification. For example, the Philippines, 52% of our land has been classified as forest land, and 47% alienable and disposable land. This is based on the figures or data of the Forest Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Actually, ang sa FMB, dalawang classification lang ito. But kung titingnan natin sa ating 1987 classification, there are 4 major land classification, and these are the following. Next slide. Okay, yung land classification, yung FMB, sabi nila dalawa yung land classification, Pero hindi siguro nila tiningnan yung 1987 Philippines Constitution provides we have agricultural land as one classification, forest land or yung tinatawag natin na timberland, and then mineral land, ito yung mga dinideclare na mineral reservation. Wala tayo dito mineral land sa Negros, but there are some mineral agreements. And ang pang-apat, yung national park, or ito yung tinatawag natin na protected areas. So basically, there are 4 major land classification. By the way, when we talk about land classification, this is different from land cover. Ibig sabihin, ito yung classification ng lupa, not necessarily the use, the legal classification. Tingnan natin yon yung ating forest cover. So yung classification ng FMB, actually 2014 pa ito na data. So yung closed forest, ito yung sinasabi natin na if you are under the trees, yung wala kang may makikita na araw, yung parang closed talaga yung ang canopy niya, yung mga dahon na dikit-dikit. So this is the closed forest. Ang open forest naman, ito yung tinatawag natin na secondary, and of course, we have the mangrove. So basically, we have 6.8 according to FMB, ang ating forest cover, but some are saying that we have only 1.9 million remaining forest cover. Actually, there are also estimates na nagsasabi na yung closed forest natin or yung natural forest is barely less than 1 million hectares out of 57% na classified timberland. So malawak na ang forest natin na open forest, and unfortunately, these are still secured dahil kung minsan ay ito pa rin yung sinasubject for illegal cutting, illegal timber poaching, and to some areas, illegal logging. Kita nyo yung mangrove natin, napakaliit na lang. We have barely 300,000 mangrove forest throughout the country. This is about 4.5% of our total land area. If you will go into Luzon, take a look of this. Okay, 54% yung 56% ang forest land ng Luzon compared to our national forest area. So yung open forest nila napakalawak na, 2.5, and take note yung mangrove nila only 100,000 more. And basically, yung closed canopy mga 1.1, and these are confined in the northern Sierra Madre Mountain ranges. Kasi malawak din na area sa Luzon yung subject for logging. Next, let us look in the Visayas, including Negros Occidental. Ito, ang Visayas area kasi many of the islands in the Visayas are lowland, Hindi gaano mataas kaya nagiging siya subject for logging industry, halos lahat ng islands. In fact, ang Cebu, kukunti na lang talaga, almost zero forest cover. Pero yung forest cover ng Cebu is very important because there are at least, if I'm not sure, if there are at least 5 species of plants and animals that could only be found in Cebu. So yung closed canopy forest sa buong Visayas is only about 124,000. Ang pinakamalawak nito ay sa Samar, I've been to Samar. Napakalawak ng forest nila at lowland at that, kasi ang pinakamataas na bundok sa Samar is less than 1,000 meters sea level. Yung Panay, kunti na rin yung forest, yung Negros, yung Cebu, and even some other areas in the Visayas. Yung Region 8, yung Leyte, kunti na rin. And let us look into the Mindanao areas in terms of forest cover. Ang closed canopy sa Mindanao, you see, it's less than a million hectares. Mahigit lang 500,000. Malawak na rin yung open forest, 1.4. At yung mangrove areas nila is only more than 100,000. So these figures clearly indicate that our forest cover in the Philippines started to diminish through the years. Okay, anong impact ng forest degradation? Una, land degradation. Nakita nyo well, there are certain areas in the country na yung lamgod na, talaga degraded na, that it's quite very difficult to grow plants. In some other areas, kailangan nila gumamit ng napakaraming fertilizers in order to grow plants, no? So anong impact sa land degradation? So basically, kung wala nang tanim, anong mangyayari? Wala na tayong pagkain. So once we could not prevent deforestation, land degradation would become a major problem here in the Philippines. Although sa ngayon, hindi pa gaano kalawak, but I think in some other areas, in some other countries, napaka-extensive na ng problema on land degradation. Okay, on the national level, only about 4% of our coral reefs in excellent condition. You see, very limited na lang. Kag saan ito makikita? Yung forest ang excellent coral reefs natin, makikita na lang sa Mindoro, sa Apo Reef, sa Apo Island in Negros Occidental, and Tubataha Reef. These are the three areas where the coral covers are still very good. Kaya dapat natin tingnan itong how do we restore our corals na napakahirap na ito talaga ang restoration in terms of marine ecosystem, particularly ang ating mga corals. Actually, ang corals pwede siyang heal its own kung hindi lang natin i-exploit or wag na natin galawin yung mga existing areas. They have their own way of regenerating. Dito sa Negros, I think, is also less than 4% yung excellent condition. Yung yung coral reefs dito sa Negros, isolated doon sa southern, particularly in Cauayan, Cauayan Town, and in northern Negros Occidental, particularly in Sagay. So okay, so anong magiging epekto kung kunti na lang at maubos pa itong coral reefs? Our food production, our fishery production started to decline already. Next slide. Hello, next slide please. Okay, ito. Dahil din sa pagkasira ng different ecosystems and habitats, marami ng hayop sa Pilipinas ang tinatawag natin na critically endangered. Tatlong level actually ang threats threats ng ating mga plants and animals. Critically endangered, the highest level of threat na kung saan yung population in the wild is already very limited, and kung hayaan pa natin na maubos yan, ay they would become extinct sooner. Next is endangered, at yung pangatlo, vulnerable. I would like to let you see this listing, because this is very interesting. Most of these species are island endemic. Anong sinasabi natin na island endemic? Confined lang siya in a particular island and could not be found anywhere else. Just like the tamarao, The tamarao is only in Mindoro, and you cannot find it anywhere. This is the largest mammal in the Philippines in terms of wildlife. Ito, very interesting. Visayan spotted deer. This is our very own spotted deer. This is in Negros, Panay, Masbate, Cebu, and I forget the island in Panay, but Guimaras. But the remaining population of the Visayan spotted deer is now confined in Negros and Panay. So extinct na siya in some other islands where these species could be found before. Of course, our dugong, as a marine mammal, ang dinagat hairy-tailed cloud rat. This cloud rat was thought to be extinct, pero nakita siya in recent years sa Dinagat Island. Hindi ito makita sa ibang part of the country, but in Dinagat lang. Ang Ilin hairy-tailed cloud rat could also be found in Ilin Island. This is in San Jose, Occidental Mindoro. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin ito nakita. Golden crowned fruit bat. This one, makikita din ito sa Negros. Philippine bareback fruit bats sa Negros, Visayan warty pig sa Negros. So if you would look into this listing, imagine how many species could be found in Negros and Panay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And classified as critically endangered. So that is how critical now our species dito sa Negros and Panay. Dahil imagine out of 8, 4 species can be found here in Negros Island. I would like to show you some interesting slides. I just borrowed this from our Executive Director, Lisa Paguntalan, to show you how diverse the Philippine species are and how diverse our different habitats. Okay, this palaka, platymantis, this can be found where? Okay, pakipindot. This can be found all over the Philippines. Pakikli, okay, you see, the red one, these are the distribution of this platymantis. Nakita nyo, makita siya sa buong Pilipinas, pero bakit hindi makita sa Palawan? Because historically, geographically, the island of Palawan has never been part of the islands of the Philippines. That's why Palawan is already a distinct biogeographic zone dahil there are certain species of plants and animals that can only be found in Palawan but not in other parts of the Philippines. In the same manner, there are a lot of species that can be found all over the different islands of Palawan, of Philippines, except Palawan. Next slide. The other one, the Philippine bulbul. Okay, this can also be found all throughout the country. So you see, these are Philippine endemic species that are widespread in different islands of the country. Next. Okay, the white-eared brown dove. These are also scattered throughout the country except Palawan. Next slide. Okay, the Philippine eagle. We thought all the while na ang Philippine eagle sa Davao lang. But did you know na ang Philippine eagle was discovered in Samar by 1901 o 1903 by Whitehead, Pero yung Davao kasi napakagaling nila mag-branding. So many people thought all the while that the Philippine eagle could only be found in Mindanao, but that could also be found in Luzon, especially here in northern Sierra Madre. The Philippine eagle, critically endangered bird, one of the largest eagle in the world. This is our national bird. Okay, this one, flame-breasted fruit dove. You know what? This fruit dove is only isolated in Luzon, and that cannot be found in some other parts of the Philippines. Why this is so? Because of our island ecosystems, there are certain species that are confined or restricted only in a particular area. Next slide. Okay, na-mention ko na itong tamaraw, So you see, you cannot see that in other parts of the Philippines, but that is only isolated and restricted in Mindoro. Unfortunately, the last count of the tamaraw, kukunti na lang talaga, They are, I don't know, 500 or something ang population head count, and they are only confined in a very limited area in Mount Iglit Baco in Occidental Mindoro. Although lately, a few years ago, my tracking or my rediscovery of the tamaraw in the oriental side of Mindoro, that was the research facilitated by the Mindoro Biodiversity Conservation Foundation, of which I was also involved. Next slide. And this one, tarsier. We thought all the while that tarsier could only be found in Bohol. Bohol is very good in branding of the tarsier, but tarsier can also be found in Mindanao. The brown deer, it's all over the Philippines except Mindoro, Panay, Negros, Cebu, and Masbate. Why? Because we have our very own deer, different from brown deer. Okay, next slide. Okay, the Visayan spotted deer, I mentioned this earlier, that can only be found in that red islands. So Negros, Panay, Masbate, and Guimaras, Cebu. But as what I mentioned, ang remaining population is only limited in Negros and Panay. Okay, this one, the Visayan bareback fruit dove. This can only be found in Cebu and Negros. All the while, this kind of bareback fruit dove was thought all the while to be extinct until it was also found in Cebu. Okay, this is the very reason why there are unique species in different islands in the region. As you can see in the map, yung white area, those are the connections of the different islands before. Okay, so as you can see, Mindanao was once connected with Luzon, no? With mainland Luzon. That's why some species that can be found in Mindanao can also be found in Luzon and vice versa. And Negros, Panay, Cebu, and Masbate shared also several species because they are one landmass before. And dito makikita, sinabi ko na to kanina, na yung Palawan has never been part of any islands of the Philippines. Also Mindoro. Mindoro is a different island. So that's why these different islands with their landmass before are so-called the different biogeographic zones of the Philippines. Okay, in terms of habitats, these are the most threatened habitats in the Philippines now. Our lowland forest, it is highly threatened now. Ang lowland forest, it's not only valuable in terms of plants or trees, but there are also very important species that can be found in the lowland forest. Ano? Some species of birds, for example, especially our Negros bleeding heart, ano? They are lowland specialists. So kung mauubos na yung lowland forest, syempre wala na rin sila matitirhan. So mountain forest, mangroves, etc. So these are the different habitats that are now threatened primarily because of habitat conversion. They have been converted into other purposes, particularly agriculture, settlement, and even industrial development. Okay, threatened or even loss of ecosystem services and benefits. So if we are losing our ecosystem, kung ang yung ecosystem natin ay sira na, ano yung impact nito? So basically, our ecosystems are providing us sufficient and clean water. Dati hindi natin binibili yung water. Ngayon nagbibili na tayo ng mineral water. So that is a very clear indicator that there is already an urgency that we have to address the ecosystem services of our forest in terms of its water potential. So ang ating mga watershed, hindi lang yung ating mga watershed, but including all other freshwater ecosystem. Ano pa yung ibang potential na services ng ating ecosystem? Yung carbon sequestration, pollution control, and clean air. No? These are being offered by our ecosystem na kung minsan hindi natin na-appreciate because what we are appreciating are the direct benefits that we could secure from there. Food sufficiency and security. This is very important benefits that we can derive from our ecosystems provided that the ecosystems are intact and they are not converted into other purposes. So sources of raw materials for various uses, including medicines, energy, etc. So energy, particularly renewable energy. So where are these coming from? Our environment. Scientific, educational, and recreational opportunities. Ito, I would like to touch on the recreational opportunities, especially tourism. Tourism has been found that cost a lot of environmental degradation to natural ecosystems. Look what happened to Boracay. I don't know how the rehabilitation has been made. Pero that, remember na isinara siya because of the need. Yung kailangan siya muna ipahinga, kailangan i-rehabilitate. So in the same manner that many of our areas, natural areas that had been used for tourism, I started to deteriorate. Palawan, in Coron, for example, medyo dumadami na rin yung mga reasoners noon, medyo may mga coliform na rin especially in El Nido. Ano? So this mass tourism greatly affected our natural environment and its purpose for ecotourism, supposedly. Livelihood and income, especially by the communities. So if the forest is gone, the livelihood of our indigenous people and local communities, depending on our forest ecosystem, should also be lost. Cultural integrity. Why? There are certain areas that are being considered sacred by our indigenous people. You know, our indigenous people has their own way to protect nature, no? Tinatawag nila yan na sacred places. At yung sacred places na yan ay hindi nila ginagalaw. They are protecting it. And that is one way of the so-called protected area. At ito pa, ngayon lang natin yata na-realize or siguro na-realize na rin ng marami na yung ating palang ecosystem ay nagmi-mitigate ng impacts of natural hazards and risks. There are natural hazards and risks na hindi naman talaga mapigilan, no? Because it's a natural way. For example, ang volcanic eruption, hindi natin mapigilan yan. But if our ecosystems are intact, there are certain ways na pwede sana ma-minimize or ma-prevent ang impact. And I would like to talk specifically on Mount Canlaon. Imagine that's an active volcano. That is one of the 5 most active volcanoes in the country. Kung pumutok yan, tapos dinyo din ang paligid, syempre saan pupunta yung mga bato? Yung lava, directly it will flow to lower areas. Sana kung maraming forest sa paligid, kahit paano, hindi man natin mapigilan yan, at least yung impact, ma-minimize natin. So yung mangroves, nabanggit ko na kanina. So there are really, if only our ecosystems are looked into in terms of its services in preventing preventing natural hazards and risks like flooding. Bakit may flooding? Saan galing yan? Bakit may landslide? So these are natural hazards. However, kung minsan kahit natural hazards yan, ang pinakadulot usapan natin diyan ay because of our intervention, because we already converted the natural ecosystems na yung capacity niya to control or mitigate the impacts of hazards medyo apektado na rin. And finally, this one, kung healthy sana ang ecosystem natin, edi wala tayong COVID ngayon because hindi na rin healthy yung ecosystem natin plus we are abusing our natural resources, especially our wildlife. So ganito yung sitwasyon natin. We have to admit this. So just from one virus, pinatigil ang isang mundo. Isang daigdig, no? Pinatigil. So just try to imagine kung gaano ka yung sinasabi natin na when nature strikes, ano? Isang virus lang yan, tinigil ang buong mundo. How much more kung mag-ilang virus pa? Nag-mutate pa yung coronavirus. So mas nagiging malaki yung impact. So just try to imagine kung ano ang nangyari dahil we did not take care of our environment, we did not take care of our natural resources. Yung immune system natin, sinasabi nila that we have to make our immune system stronger. Paano kahit we are trying to live healthy, yung mga pagkain natin puno ng chemicals, yung hangin natin na hinihinga, polluted. So yung paligid natin hindi malinis. So how could we, how could we withstand the so-called immunity? So ngayon, yung advocacy natin that we have to look into na kung healthy yung ecosystem natin, healthy din yung tao. Just try to imagine, punta kayo sa mga lugar na medyo natural pa yung environment. Di pa napakaganda ng feeling. Kaya yung sinasabi nila na nature is part of the healing. Kaya I think this is the time that we have to consider not only the benefits in terms of livelihood, in terms of income, but we have to go through the other benefits, the invisible benefits that we can derive from our healthy ecosystems. Okay, so the way forward for ecosystem restoration, I have only few slides. First, we have to look our ecosystems in a wider view. Sa pinakita ko kanina sa inyo, yung mga ecosystems natin are connected. Hindi pwede na protektahan na natin yung forest, hindi natin protektahan yung ibang ecosystems and vice versa. Kasi ang ating ecosystem ay connected. Kaya what I am saying here, there should be integrated approach in environment and natural resources management from the highest peak to the sea. Ito yung tinatawag ng iba na ridge to reef. Yung iba naman, tinatawag na integrated ecosystems approach. O may iba naman, especially me, I would usually call this landscape and seascape approach. Alam mo, kung for example, we are protecting the mangrove areas, we are protecting the coastal areas, hindi naman natin pinoprotect yung forest, kumakalbo yung bukid. So lahat ng mga washout dyan, saan pupunta? Sa river, to the coastal, and eventually to the marine environment. So kailangan na talaga na integrated ecosystem. Kaya dapat mag-usap-usap na rin yung mga different government agencies, ano? Na hindi DNR lang, o natural resources, agriculture, ang BFAR. So these are the things that need to be integrated if you want the different ecosystems to be restored. Pangalawa, napakasimple lang, since then, wala pang pandemic, ito yung advocacy ko. Protection of the remaining natural forest and other natural ecosystems. Sana wag na natin gamitin yung mga remaining natural forest natin. Kung sa buong Pilipinas ay less than 1 million hectares na lang yan, kailangan pa ba natin gamitin yan? If Negros has less than 4% natural forest compared to its total land area, shall we use it pa? So, kaya siguro the best thing to do is to protect the remaining natural forest and other ecosystem. And next is to rehabilitate the denuded forest and other degraded ecosystems the right way. Bakit in-emphasize ko ang right way? Alam mo kung minsan, sa sincerity natin na magkaroon ng participation in terms of environmental protection, gumagawa tayo ng mga activities na akala natin ay makakatulong sa ating environment. Yun pala ay mas lalong makakasira or sinasabi natin na baka makadagdag pa ng problema, no? And this has been proven just like planting of exotic species, ano? Yung exotic species, yung tinatawag natin na hindi native sa isang lugar. Ang example nito, yung eucalyptus, gibellina, mga acacia, etc. These are non-native species in the Philippines or in our particular area. So ano ang impact nito kung itanim natin ito sa mga areas natin? Unang-una, they are not intended for habitat restoration or even watershed restoration. Why? They are not part of that ecosystem. So yung ginagawa natin, if we are introducing plants na hindi native in a particular area, we are creating biological pollution. And might be, later on, dumami yan at i-invade nila yung mga natural organisms in that area at mamamatay. Example, have you been to mahogany plantations, yung pure mahogany lang na area? Kung titingnan nyo, kung minsan walang undergrowth. So the undergrowth is part of the ecosystem. No? So yun yung tinitingnan natin, that when we talk about rehabilitation of our forest, let's restore what was the forest before. So using indigenous native species, dapat magkaroon ng suitability assessment. Maraming nagtitree planting, ano? I mean, tree planting siguro, napakaganda naman yan kasi that is one way of educating the people. But we do it the right way. Ito pa yung isa. Ano to ngayon, popular ito sa Negros. Remember na may mga rivers na medyo shallow na? So the local government units are dredging, no? Gumagamit sila ng dredging. Eh, wala naman yan masama kung yung along with the dredging ay may rehabilitation ng ating riverbank, may rehabilitation ng ating forest. Kahit anong dredge mo ng dredge sa mga rivers, kung every now and then, kung umulan, mawawash out ang soil, hindi stable yung riverbank mo, ay pupunta pa rin yan sa ating rivers. So that's not the long-term solution. What we need to do is the pure river rehabilitation. Ito pa yung isang example. We want to restore our mangrove forest. But there are certain areas na pati yung mga areas na hindi dapat taniman ng mangroves ay tinataniman. Example, ang seagrass. Ang seagrass is a natural ecosystem by itself na kung saan habitat siya diyan nagpo-produce ng ilang marine organism. So hindi natin i-convert ang seagrass into mangrove forest dahil hindi rin yan magtatagal ang mangroves dyan. Mamamatay din yan. And also, in the same way, may mga mudflats tayo. Ito yung sinasabi natin na kung minsan ayaw natin maligo sa dagat dahil muddy siya, tapos medyo makati yung sinasabi nila, yung area na yan. But that is very important in terms of water birds and migratory birds na kung saan kumakain sila during the migration pattern. And I'm very glad that Negros Occidental has the largest Ramsar site in the country today. Ito yung Negros Occidental Coastal Wetlands Conservation Area natin na spanning from Bago to to ilog, ano? Ito yung pinakalawak na Ramsar site sa buong Pilipinas. We have only 7 Ramsar sites sa Pilipinas at yung Negros Occidental Ramsar site, ito yung Negros Occidental Coastal Wetlands Conservation Area. Ito yung pinakamalawak, and I would like to congratulate the local government units, the provincial government and the DNR for initiating the declaration of these wetlands of international importance. So we have to rehabilitate our ecosystems in the right way. Pangapat, integrate resource conservation in all aspects of governance, from policies, programs, projects, and activities. So dapat may may environmental impact kung whatever policies, for whatever programs, whatever projects that should be implemented. Hindi lang ng DNR. Actually, karamihan ng projects ng other national agencies are very destructive to the environment. Like yung ginagawa ng DPWH, construct ng roads sa ating mga protected areas. So what's happening? They are not only cutting trees, but they are also providing opening to our protected areas na magkaroon ulit ng mga bagong settlement. So that's why we have to integrate the resource conservation not only in the policies, programs of the national, but including local governments. Dapat naka-integrate sa local governments ang sa kanila yung comprehensive land use plan, yung resource management, or yung biodiversity conservation. And by the way, ang Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board ay gumawa ng isang manual on how to integrate biodiversity conservation in the land use planning of the local government units. That's available online. I think you can access that or through the HLURB. Next, way forward. We have so many things. Engage a much broader stakeholders in resource management. Dapat hindi lang tayo-tayo. Dapat i-expand natin. Kahit mining companies, dapat i-encourage natin to do resource management, to do environmental protection. The business communities, the academic, all other sectors. So dapat at this time of health and climate crisis, lahat naman tayo apektado. So let us as much as possible, gain broader stakeholders. Alam mo I'm old enough. I've been working in conservation for the past 3 decades, more than 30 years. And working for conservation, alam mo ano yung pinaka strategy? We should create more champions on environment. We should create more friends and not enemies. Ito, mahirap ito, Shifting of economic paradigm to low consumptive and environment-friendly technologies and models. Example, ang agriculture natin. We have to shift to sustainable and organic farming. And this is already the banner program of Negros Occidental. Our infrastructure should be adaptive to climate change and safety. Our transportation, electric cars are being used in some other countries. And of course, the use of renewable energy and biodegradable materials. Alam mo yung biodegradable materials na ito, this has something to do with consumption. If you would notice, karamihan ng mga areas, especially in urban areas, kung saan may mga informal settlers, doon na napakaraming non-biodegradable materials. Why? Because they are dependent on budgeted or economy size na packaging. Ito yung mga maliliit na good for one use lang. So dumadami ang mga plastics na tinatapon. So yung pinakahirit ko dito na the multinational corporations, itong mga producers, should be the one to reconsider sa packaging nila in terms of product na mababawasan ang mga plastics o yung mga non-biodegradable materials. Kahit anong clean up natin every now and then, if the production of non-biodegradable materials continue, wala pa rin tayong may maasahan dyan. And also, we have to heighten public awareness and appreciation on environment, particularly in integrating biodiversity conservation in the educational curriculum, from prep school to college. Alam mo, there are certain areas, for example, some schools are not even familiar what are the species that can be found in their locality because of the absence of resource materials. Mas kilala pa ng mga bata, yung tiger, yung giraffe, yung elephant, kaysa mga native species natin, because we have to integrate biodiversity conservation in our educational curriculum. And finally, we have to increase investment and portfolio in natural resource conservation and environmental protection. So kung titingnan mo in terms of national priority, hindi number 1 or number 2 or number 3, no? Medyo kulilat ang DNR in terms of budget. And even private companies, magkano ba ang ina-allocate natin for environment? Karamihan, especially sa local governments, mas malaki yung ina-allocate for environment, for infrastructure. Yung sa environment, very minimal. So, anong gagawin natin sa infrastructure kung masira din yan by natural calamities? So, we have to invest more in terms of our environmental or ecosystem protection and restoration. And second to the last item, ito ang napakahirap. Political will among local and national leaders to implement policies, programs, and projects. This means good governance. When we talk about environment, governance is a very important item because what's basically happening to our environment is part how we were being governed, how we are being governed at this point in time. So good governance is very essential if we want to protect, to restore, and to make our ecosystem healthy. And finally, creating or influencing values of conservation as a way of life. Yung sinasabi ko na, I do my share, you do your share, we all do our share in terms of conservation. And finally, with my last slide, this is just only a reminder, and I borrowed this from late William Oliver, one of the founders of Biodiversity Conservation Foundation. So it is really up to us when we talk about environment. It is our world, our country, our government, our province, our municipality and city, our community, our island, our natural and cultural heritage. And finally, this is about our children's future. So it is up for us to destroy or to cherish our future, their future. So this is our choice. Thank you, and madamo gid salamat sa tanan.
That is such a great presentation, Sir Errol. Thank you for sharing your expert tips and knowledge about ecosystem restoration. And at this point in time, we will have our open forum session. Are you ready?
No problem. I hope I could respond to all questions.
Yes, we actually have a very engaging and very active online participants because they have sent a lot of questions, which means that they are super interested with participating in this discussion. So,
Kung
shall we
nakita
start?
ko sa chat group, sa chat, ang daming tanong. I hope I could
Yes.
accommodate all of this. Okay, let's start.
Yeah, all right. So, let us begin with the first question. Does the pandemic truly healed Mother Earth?
Well, it's quite very difficult to say, but because there was no formal studies yet about it. But there are just some indicators. Nabanggit ko na kanina, no? Because of the lockdown, na-minimize ang pollution. Because of the lockdown, na-minimize ang consumption natin sa ating mga natural resources, even energy. So that is basically has an impact to the environment. And third, yung wildlife natin moving freely. So in a way, the pandemic did not totally heal nature, but somehow it has an impact when it comes to our natural ecosystems or natural environment. But I would not to make a conclusive statement that the pandemic really healed nature. Somehow, there are some positive ways it created, but I would not claim to have healed.
Okay, so just what you said earlier, there's like a global pause. The world, yung mundo ay tumigil, as what you have said earlier. Okay, thank you for that answer. Let us go to
another point lang, ang
Yes.
example nito, ang mga eroplano, di ba methane yan, and then ang binubugan nila ay greenhouse gas. Yung greenhouse gas na sumisira ng ating ozone layer, nagiging pollution. So just try to imagine walang mga airplanes na lumabas during that time.
Yes. Yeah. Thousands of flights are being canceled. So, which is good. Okay, so let us go to our question number 2. What ecosystem restoration initiatives or activities can be done in the individual level?
Wow, this is very good, what you can do as an individual. First, practice proper solid waste management. Huwag magkalat at huwag tapon dito, tapon doon. That's personal thing. Second, yung sinasabi ko, live a simple life. What are your
Yes.
needs? Kailangan pa ba natin magparami pa ng maraming pera? So what are the basic needs that we need to answer? Third, grow your own food as much as possible if you have grounds to plant. So these are simple ways, no? And then practice conservation in any way you can, just like conserving water, conserving energy, and conserving your consumption. So those are the little things that we can do as an individual. By doing so, we are actually helping restore the ecosystem.
Yes, and there's a global or like a fad recently. Dumarami yung mga nagiging plantito and plantita. So that is one of the ways we can do in order to restore our ecosystem, right?
Yeah, and I think ang maganda sana dito aside from ornamental plants, subukan na rin natin magtanim ng sariling pagkain like vegetable Ito lang ganito lang, look at the impacts of the agriculture. From producers, nagtanim yan. Kung minsan gumagamit ng chemical, i-transport yan into market. Anong ginamit? Gasolina, kailangan ng vehicle. And then sa market, maraming tao, marami na namang basura at may mga interaction. So just try to imagine if you are growing your own food.
Yes, exactly.
And during this pandemic, if you are growing your own food, you are not exposing yourself in going to the market.
Correct.
So
Yes.
these are simple things that we have to remind ourselves.
So we should create our backyard gardens, vegetable gardens. Yes, and thank you for that answer. Let us go to our third question. What is mass species extinction? Are we experiencing this now?
No, we don't yet. At this point in time, what we have now are threatened species. These are species threatened to extinction individually. As far as mass extinction, like what happened to dinosaur, I don't think we have already that now. But thousands of species around the world, dito lang sa Pilipinas, marami na eh. In fact, ang sinabi ko kanina na mammals lang, critically endangered, 8 na, aside from other species. So, what we have now is not really a mass extinction, but we have many species that are already threatened to extinction as an individual species.
Which means this kind of awareness can make us be aware that we can do something about this individual species extinction.
Yeah. So what we can do here is really to protect the remaining habitats. Otherwise, if we will continue to destroy the habitats of the species, eventually, saan sila pupunta? Hindi lang sila mamamatay, no? They might be carrier of virus, no? Because some experts are saying na this would not be the last ang coronavirus, this COVID-19, it would not be the last. There are also some other animals that are carrier of pathogens. So kung hindi sila ma-confined sa environment nila, sa kanilang sariling tahanan, tulad lang ito ng tao, example nito ang tao, kung COVID positive ka at palakad-lakad ka sa labas or you're getting out of the house, pumupunta ka sa ibang tao, you are contaminating them. So that is an example how animals are contaminating the virus.
So if we have animals from the wilderness and they decide to roam around the villages or the city in order to look for food, so there's a very high chance of them carrying some hazards with them.
Yes, naturally, because some animals are carrier of the viruses, especially the bats. So what we need, but however, we should not be against them because they also play important roles in our environment.
Correct.
Bats, for example, there are certain species of plants nga hindi siya mabuhay if hindi mo na kailangan ng bats. And the bats are agent of restoration because they disperse seeds. So basically, ganun yung dapat, no? As much as possible, we have to create an environment where the animals shall be restricted on their habitat.
Yes, precisely. Thank you for that clarification, Sir Errol. Now let us go to our question number 4. Can you discuss the long-term impact of cutting of trees in the urban areas, like what happened in Bacolod City recently?
Well, aside from greening and beautification, we are using trees for greening and beautification. We are also advocating actually for urban restoration in terms of ecosystem. Why? Because as you can see, ang urban ecosystems are getting congested, especially vehicles. So we need to create or establish green belts, tree parks, corridors para may mag-absorb kahit paano ng carbon, yung pollution. Okay. Second, we also need to create green areas to avoid flooding. Ang mangyayari kasi kung simentado na lahat yan, kung umulan, saan pupunta yung tubig?
Yes,
So,
yes.
basically, kung simento lahat yan, they will just find their ways into waterways at kung walang waterways na maganda, kung hindi maganda yung drainage system, baha yan. So, however, if green spaces, yung makikita natin na purely grass lang at may mga puno dyan, so basically, kung umulan, may mag-absorb ng water. So, maiwasan or ma-prevent natin yung impact ng flooding in the urban areas. So I think that is the impact of cutting of trees in the urban areas. As much as possible, we create more. Yung cutting sa Bacolod City, yung sa Bacolod Airport, napakalungkot
Very
yan. Kasi alam nyo, kahit tinanim nyo na puno, 2 puno doon ay threatened species na. Yung Nara at yung, I forgot the other one. But these are the species na threatened na in fact, ang DNR is advocating na dapat i-restore natin or we will plant more of that. And then mayroon ka doon sa plaza, makikita, ma-appreciate ang tao, what are the native plants, ay pinutol pa. So that was very sad.
Yes, and earlier during your presentation, you have also discussed about tree planting activities, right? So there are a lot of tree planting initiatives in the mountains, but also in the urban areas. Can you tell us what exactly kind of trees can we plant or can we bring during these tree planting or tree growing initiatives?
Well, if you would go to DNR, you may ask them, kasi DNR, di ba, may seedling production. You ask them what are the native species in the Philippines. I think that could be easily produced, because there are also communities. Alam nyo, kung ito yung mga nagre-reforestation, first thing that you would ask, kung magre-reforest kayo, especially in the uplands, tanungin nyo if there are communities in the area planting trees or gumagawa ng mga nurseries. Because dito sa Negros Occidental kasi, marami tayong mga integrated social forestry areas. Ito yung mga holders ng stewardship contracts. So may mga may mga nurseries. So before you go into the area, you ask kung may mga seedlings ang communities where you can buy. Makapagbigay pa kayo ng hanap buhay sa kanila. At the same time, you could choose native and indigenous species of trees.
I see. So you can recommend planting Nara here in the city, in
As much
Bacolod
as possible,
City.
yes. As much as possible, we should not only focus in one species, because when we talk about diversity, we have to be diverse in terms of species we are planting, So hindi lang kung nara na yan. So there are several species that the DNR may be able to recommend to you.
Correct. And in the mountains, there are a lot of people planting acacia mangium.
Yes. Acacia mangium is an exotic species.
Yes.
That is actually intended for production purposes. Maganda siya kasi yung bone materials. So ako okay lang sa akin, na if you plant exotic species dito sa mga private property for purposes of producing and what you call this, supplying our lumber and timber requirements. Okay lang yan. Kasi kailangan din natin ng timber and lumber, di ba? In construction. So kailangan may supplies tayo. So yung supplies natin ay dapat galing na sa planted trees. Alam mo sa mga landed people, if they would just invest in tree plantations, napakalaking investment ito later on, in a matter of 5 to 10 years or even 20 years, malaking investment yan para sa kanilang mga apo or anak.
Correct. Yes, and they grow very fast as well. Yeah, and we have here question number 5. Do we have enough water resources in Negros Occidental?
Yes, during rainy season we have a lot.
How about during summer?
This is a situation not only in Negros Occidental. We have a lot of water during rainy season, but we have lack of water in dry season. There was one point in time in areas surrounding Mount Canlaon, particularly in La Castellana and also in Candonia. I really don't know now, but there was one point in time na kung summer, ang mga tao nagpipila para kumuha ng tubig. Okay?
In the mountains.
So, even in mountains, kasi medyo malayo na yung source of water. So in terms of water supply, hindi ko alam kung may recent hydrological study, but I think we have not to wait na sabihin natin na wala na tayong tubig in order to do water conservation and resource management. I think ang province may project ngayon on watershed management and restoration, which is very essential. So I would not say that kung talaga may kulang na siguro there are certain point in time na may scarcity, especially kung prolong yung La Nina, no? There were cases in the past na kailangan na ng province mag air shedding para may artificial rain dahil
Rain.
the dry season expanded. So those are the indicators lang, hindi ko pa naman sabihin na phenomenon, but there are certain indicators in the past na medyo nagkulang na yung tubig natin.
Yes. There is actually an ongoing project of the province with the USA, the Safe Water program. Yes, which aims to restore or increase the water resource in the province.
Yeah, I hear that. That was launched, I think, 2 weeks ago or this Environment
This
Month.
month. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
I was able to attend the online
Virtual
launching, the virtual
yeah.
launching.
Mm-hmm,
And
exactly.
congratulations to the province again for that laudable initiative.
Yes, exactly, Sir Errol.
Daming tanong There's a very
We
fast
actually have very, very engaging and interesting participants. So that's why our questions are really very relevant and interesting. Are you so far enjoying answering these
No
questions,
problem,
Sir
no
Errol?
problem.
Yes.
Talking to people is one of my learning while doing conservation work, not only here in the Philippines but also in some other countries.
Yes, and this also reflects the interest of our online participants in relation to our environment and the ecosystem restoration. So, shall we move?
I hope this will trigger a lot of interest because at this point in time, at this point of health and climate crisis, we really have to do our share.
Correct. And Sir Errol, we have a lot of students who are watching us and participating with us online right now, and also a lot of government employees, particularly teachers. Okay, so
Okay, thank you for joining.
we go to question number 6. What are the initiatives that we need to do to campaign for safe water?
Wow, safe water. Of course, one is the watershed rehabilitation. That is very important. Second, we have to consider the disposal of waste in water systems. Kung wastewater man yan, dapat ay treated water. Actually, it is a violation if you dump water in the river system na hindi siya treated. So dapat treated ang wastewater. And of course, the solid waste aspect. The third item that we need to do to ensure safe water is avoid activities that would contaminate our water source. Especially the large scale mining. I really don't know how they are impacting, but large scale mining is directly affecting the soil and the water. So that's why I am really advocating for the moratorium of the logging industry here in the industry in the Philippines, because this is quite very dangerous in terms of water system. And third, dapat very clear ang ating land use plan or yung zoning na where are the residential areas. Ang residential area should be away from the water source. Diba? Kasi for example, kung residential areas yan, malapit yan sa dagat or malapit sa ilog, saan ba, I'm sorry to say, but saan ba dinadump yung mga human refuse or yung mga dumi natin at even the household use? So these are the things. So I think we need to ensure safety water by also observing sanitation. So sanitation and safe water should go together aside from protecting the environment, protecting our river system, watershed rehabilitation, and many other things.
Yes, exactly. And thank you for that answer. This discussion is actually a good awareness initiative or activity for all of our listeners. So let's go to question number 7. How can critical ecosystem be restored?
For example, one of the critical ecosystem natin ngayon is our forest. The different types of forest is really critical, Kasi for example, why I said critical. For example, kung yung land area natin supposedly is 40% classified as forest, and then ilang percent na lang yung natira na forest, even less than 5, so that is very critical, right? So that's only an indicator that our forest is really critical. So what is the important thing to be done? So we need to restore the critical ecosystem by do forest restoration, by doing habitat restoration. Pero ito yung sinasabi ko na when we do about ecosystem restoration in terms of our forest, restore nga di ba? So we would like to restore what has been destroyed and
Correct.
not restore and not replacing a different ecosystem. For example, dati mga native plants yan, tinaniman mo ngayon ng mga exotic species. Are we restoring the original forest cover? No, we are not. So that's why it's a very critical, for example, in our forest ecosystem, if we do restoration, we should be doing it the right way by doing suitability assessment. Ano ang suitability assessment? Let us first, the communities, the people around there, ano yung mga tanim dito before? What was the area looks like before? And from there, we try to plan out our activities. So hindi lang yung restoration is not just a matter of planting tree. It is a question of growing, maintaining the trees. Hindi naman natin kailangan sana i-restore yung forest natin kung pabayaan lang natin yung mga denuded areas, yung mga secondary forest has its own way of healing by natural regeneration. The problem kung may human intervention, especially forest fire, kaingin, agriculture, and wars, kung paano natin ma-restore yung ecosystem natin kung converted na yan into settlement, into agriculture. Example, yung mga mangrove areas natin, marami yan dito sa Negros. Many areas in Negros, mangrove areas, has been converted into fish pond. So how could we restore that? So kailangan natin, dahil wala namang fish pond agreement ngayon, so dapat kunin natin yung mga hindi na ginagamit for fish pond purposes and do the restoration of our mangroves.
Yes, correct. Do you recommend that do you recommend to our participants now that before they do their like tree growing and tree planting activities, they should coordinate first with their local DENR?
Yeah, and especially communities, wag lang basta-basta pumunta ka doon and then plant trees. Kung minsan ito pa, nakakalungkot, just like the solid waste, just like the clean up drive, may mga communities, pero yung mga communities kung minsan nagiging bystanders.
Yeah.
Yung parang nanonood lang na, mga tagalabas ang naglilinis, tagalabas yung nagtatanim. You know, when we go into ecosystem restoration, kasama po yung tao, kasama yung communities natin. We will not be successful in whatever restoration without involving communities, especially communities na andoon mismo, malapit or adjacent sa site.
Yes, I think our keyword there is collaboration with the community.
I guess so. That is very important.
Thank you for that answer. Now we go to our question number 8, and it says, are there some programs for ecosystem restoration that we student can be part of? So probably this question comes from a student.
Okay, student. Create kayo ng suggestion ko dito sa sa mga estudyante. Create kayo ng tree parks sa inyong school showing different native plants sa mga area niyo. So that at least you have an example. You know, by creating, hindi niyo na kailangan pumunta pa sa napakalayong lugar. If there are space in your school, you create botanical garden, arboretum, or tree parks. That's a very simple way. And then you engage yourself in solid waste management, zero plastic campus, something like that.
Yes.
So you can also do nursery. Yung nursery nyo na pwede nyo ipamigay sa communities yung mga tanim nyo. So, and finally, yung education. Kailangan i-educate yung sarili nyo sa school about environment, about restoration, and bring that knowledge to your family. Bring that knowledge to your communities. So each one of us should be a communicator, a conservation communicator.
Yes, exactly. So even during this time of pandemic, our students can really still do something and contribute to the restoration of the ecosystem by doing it locally in their schools, in their barangays.
Yes, instead of social media or games sa cellphone or sa computer, sa laptop, you engage yourself in certain outdoor activities kung may space lang naman within your house or within your community. Example, if you are doing tree parks, just make sure social distancing. Actually, mas maganda pa ngayong open areas kaysa sa enclosed areas.
It's safe. Correct. Thank you for that insight, Sir Errol. Now we go to our question number 9. You pointed out that tourism is the cause of environmental deterioration. What is your advice, suggestion, and recommendation to government with regards to this?
Actually, this is a global problem, not only in the
Mhm.
Philippines. Kasi in terms of travel, sa travel lang, ano ba yung consumption natin in terms of energy at sa napakaraming tao, yung electricity. I think what we should do now, dahil may pandemic, I think we should learn from this low impact tourism.
Tourism.
When we say about low impact, we are not creating a lot of footprints.
Mhm.
We are not consuming a lot of resources. So siguro itong, I would say na, although abuse na ito na term, let us engage in ecological tourism or ecotourism, na kung
Mhm.
saan we have to determine the carrying capacity of the area. Hindi lang
Mhm.
tanggap ng bisita for income purposes, kasi kung masira ang area, business yun rin yung masisira. So we need to determine the carrying capacity of the area.
Mhm.
Ilan lang ba yung bisita na pwedeng i-accommodate ng
Mhm.
area na yan in a given time?
Yeah.
So what in terms of resources, anong resources lang ang pwede i-provide? I think may example na tayo sa Negros. 2 islands are practicing and observing carrying capacity. Ito yung Danyugan Island sa Philippine Reef and Rainforest sa
Mhm.
Kawayan, and Suyak Island, because they are limiting their visitors in a given number. Kung mag-climb ka sa Mount Canlaon, sa crater, although close ngayon dahil may activity, if you climb in Mount Canlaon, may limit ang
Mhm.
persons to engage. So these are the low impact tourism that would use local people as employees, use of locally produced products, and
Yeah.
then use of locally or indigenous materials. So these are the things that we need to consider in terms of tourism. Just like imagine magkano ang losses ng ecotourism industry dahil sa pandemic.
Yeah.
So I think this time we have to look into in terms of low impact tourism.
Mhm. Is there also a regulation to limit the number of tourist spots or the rise of these cafes locally?
Wala, I don't think nationally, pero yung mga local cafes, and even the number of tourists, I think there is no guideline for that, but the local government actually can enact an ordinance.
Mhm.
So it is up for you to lobby, to engage your local government to enact, for example, carrying capacity of your tourism sites.
Mhm.
What are the carrying capacity? So I think local ordinances. Yung regulations or regulating itong mga cafe, mga resorts, kasama dapat yan sa zoning ordinance ng LGUs. Where are only the areas where how would you call this? Where facilities can be constructed, and what are those kinds of facilities? I think this is within the mandate of the local government units.
Yes. But so far, wala pa naman tayong over-tourism na nangyayari sa province. Because of the pandemic, there's a pause.
Yeah, I think so. But there are indications that some tourist activities are affecting our environment. I would like to cite. This is to be candid, like the beautiful Tinagong Dagat in Sipalay. You see that islets, and napakaraming islets na parang 100 islands. We have also napakaraming islet. Maganda sana siya kung hindi siya kinunek, to leave it that way. And sana walang structures within sa mga islets. Kasi alam nyo, wala pa pag-aaral dyan. Karst forest yan, limestone forest, that is quite a very unique kind of forest. So hindi natin kailangan mag-create ng structure. Put the structures in the mainland and do boating, or madagdagan pa ang income ng local people because they have to hire boats, they have to do trekking, they have to they need guides. Kung lagyan mo yan ng connection ang one
The
island to
bridge.
the other. So pwede na silang maglakad-lakad lang doon. They will no longer hire pump boats or baroto for that matter.
Yes. And also, we have to be responsible tourists as well.
Yeah, especially yung sa marine, Kung may mga areas tayo na may mga coral reefs, we should be careful, Kasi maapakan na natin yung coral reefs, patay na. Ang ilang years na pagtubo ng coral reefs, isang mo lang, wala na kaagad, patay na. So I think and then may mga tourists pala mo, na kumukuha ng mga shellfish, kumukuha ng mga starfish, or any other marine organisms na ginawang souvenirs. So let us avoid all those things. We have to avoid getting souvenirs from our natural resources. Hayaan na nating dumami yung mga yan sa kanilang natural environment.
Yes, thank you for that answer, Sir Errol. And we move on to our 10th question. What can you say about promoting caves as tourism destination, just like Obong Cave, which you have also mentioned in your presentation?
Alam mo, again, balik tayo, carrying capacity. Ang cave kasi is a special area, no? Kung adventure area yan eh. Hindi siya ba dapat i-open lang sa lahat-lahat, especially yung walang mga gamit. Kasi aside from safety, ang ecological aspect niya pa, mahawakan mo lang ang stalagmite, maapakan mo lang, that's very sensitive. So, as what I've said, dapat low impact yung gagawin natin when we do. Alam mo, ang natural ecosystems, hindi ko naman sinasabi na wag nating galawin. Andyan yan for us to enjoy and appreciate. But we have to do it in a right way, na hindi naman to the extent na sinisira natin. So again, it would reflect in terms of carrying capacity. Dapat carefully planned when we open our caves into tourism.
Yes. In relation to Obong Cave, can we still restore this cave?
I don't know if we leave it closed for decades.
Yeah, it will take a lot of time.
Yes.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. Now we go to, probably this will be our last question for this segment. What can you say about eco trails in mangrove areas? Do you think it's a threat to the environment?
Use bamboos. I've been into different mangrove areas where they are using, kanina pinakita ko, they are using bamboos for their ano tawag dito, yung
Pass.
yung ano nila. In fact, it's very beautiful to see, ano. So use indigenous materials, sabihin nila na from time to time masisira. It's the quality of the material instead of doing semento, ano. So malaking sira pa yung semento. So use indigenous materials, especially bamboo. So it's a different thing. Yung eco trail kasi is different from connecting island to island. Okay, kasi yung ang eco trail naman for the mangroves is a different way, ano? Yung parang kinonect niya lang ang different mangrove trees, but you are not creating a very big structure na ito yung tinatawag ko na to destroy visual corridor. Anong visual corridor? Yung visual corridor parang yung walang harang yung tinitingnan mo. Di ba? So however, kung may harang na yan, sinisira mo yung natural features ng area. So if we do structures, we make sure na hindi natin sinisira yung visual corridor ng area na yan. So dapat, minsan, for example, andyan tayo in the higher areas. So gusto natin makita yung view sa harap. So let's not create structures in front of it na ma-cover yung view. So that is something we have to remind ourselves when we talk about infrastructure development in our tourism site. Sayang kasi.
Yes. Thank you for that answer, Sir Errol. And all right, I guess that is our last question for this segment. Thank you so much for generously answering the questions of our participants. Do you have any last message or insight you would like to part before we end this segment?
Once again, thank you to Negros Occidental Information and Technology Center, especially kay Tina, no? Long time no see sa imo ihada doon. It's good to see you and to be with you here online, kay Sel and all your staff. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and congratulations for choosing the theme ecosystem restoration, because this is very timely. You know what? When we work about conservation, when we work about environment, this is not just a work. This is somewhat like a vocation and commitment with passion. Because if you are working for the environment, kung tinitingnan mo lang ito na trabaho, you will get frustrated. Hindi ka tatagal. With so many issues, with so many challenges along the way, with so many obstacles, you will not reach your goal. So you really have to be patient, you have to have understanding, and you have the passion to carry on, dahil sabi nila, yung usapin ng environment, hindi lang ito usapin ng trabaho, hindi ito usapin ng income, but this is the question of life. So to all the viewers, to all those who joined us for this afternoon session, thank you very much. Should you need to get in touch with me, my Facebook profile is in public. And I'm posting a lot of environmental messages in my Facebook page. You can also get in touch with me through my Twitter, with my Instagram and also in my blog at
Yes.
erogatumbato.worldpress.com or through the Digicast Negros, where I am contributing as an environment column. So there are a lot of platforms that we can continue to get in touch with each other, and I'm very open for as long na kaya ko at I could be of help. Mayong hapon sa aton nga tanan, and let us continue to be safe and healthy. Mayong hapon, Wat.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Errol, for generously sharing your insights and tips about ecosystem restoration. Let us give Sir Errol a big round of applause. All right. And also, we would like to appreciate and give thanks to our very active and engaging online participants for actively engaging in this discussion. In order to get your digital certificate, please don't forget to accomplish the evaluation form through the link provided in the description box below. Please do this right after the webinar ends or right now. Your email address should be typed in correctly. Be careful with the spelling of your email address so it won't bounce back. You can see now the QR code to our online evaluation form. Please do remember the evaluation site will be open only until 6 o'clock this evening. I hope you're all doing it now. There you have it, our dear ladies and gentlemen. This concludes our environmental restoration webinar. Don't miss out our webinar next week on July 5. We will have introduction to Adobe Animate. See you using the same platform. You should be able to receive a link through your emails. So that's it, everyone. Happy Environment Month. Stay safe. Take care. NOLITC inspire. NOLITC cares. Avance. Negrense.